a question yourself. If so as I let's go. Hello. Good evening and welcome to the Woman Experience with me, Goretti, your host. I'm giggling. I'm laughing because I was actually dancing along to Prince. You need to watch that video. That was Prince with Let's Go Crazy. If you know our guest, you know that she's a massive, a super fan of Prince's. So she recommended that and it's really groovy. So I was dancing to that. Welcome, Marie. Welcome, Auntie Louisa. Welcome, Mami. Welcome, Diana. And everyone who's joining, thank you guys for joining. I'm sharing as much as I can. So if you can just take a minute and share so we have a few more people with us before we start. I'm going to leave you with the rest of that Prince song. And yeah, please share and I'll see you back here in a minute. Thank you. And entrepreneurs in Europe and Asia respectively. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening. Welcome again. For those who are just joining us, welcome to the Woman Experience with me, Goretti. I'm your host for tonight, and I've got my guest who's backstage waiting, and you are my third guest. If you're new here and you're here because of our guest of tonight, thank you very much for spending your Friday evening with us. We appreciate that very much. Welcome to the Woman Experience community. This is a platform where we learn via our shared experiences. We believe in that very strongly. It is a judgment-free zone, and we encourage everyone to be very participatory. So if you have a suggestion to make, if you have an answer to a question that's been asked in the comment section, if you have a question yourself, if you have a resource to share, leave it all in the comments section. And generally what I try to do is I bring up your questions to whenever they're relevant to the conversation at hand. So I try my best to read as many questions as I can and comments as I can. So, but if I do not read yours, I hope you'll be understanding, but we do appreciate, because the rest of the people who are watching will certainly be reading your comments. So thank you very much and welcome to the Woman Experience. I'm so excited that you're here. So as I said in my post, our guest of tonight, she needs little or no introduction at all, especially in the financial world. She is what I call a powerhouse. She's a powerful woman. She is currently the leading voice in the fintech conversations across the African continent and a strong advocate for women in fintech. Viola Llewellyn is president and co-founder of Ovamba Solutions, which is an award-winning African trade tech company that creates culturally attuned technologies for banks and central banks so that they can better serve small and medium enterprises with innovative Sharia compliant trade finance products. In this is just, I'm going to read out a few accolades, just a few reasons why I call her a powerhouse. In June 2018, Ovamba, her company, which she's a co-founder, was selected by the World Economic Forum as a global technology pioneer, securing a 2-year ambassadorship and a place at the very, very prestigious Davos Summit Conference. If You want to Google Davos Summit if you don't know about it. Viola was listed in Digital Undivided Report as one of only 34 Black women in the USA to raise more than $1 million for a technology company that was featured in Vanity Fair. She is the first ever female African tech founder to speak at both Slush Helsinki and Slush Tokyo yearly events. And these events are billed as the biggest gatherings of innovators, funders, startups, and entrepreneurs in Europe and Asia, respectively. Her past career, again, includes building a $500 million life insurance investment fund for a Washington, D.C. based insurance firm, where she led investor communications and asset management divisions. She's listed on the prestigious Innovate Finance's 2016, 2017, and 2018 Women in FinTech Power list and Lattice 80's Top Women in FinTech 2019 list. She is on a number of advisory boards, including the Africa Professional Services Group, the European Women's Payment Network, and so many more. She is also a TED Talk alumni, and her TED Talk is a new model of microfinance for Africa and beyond. So if you want to know more about Viola, it's worth watching that TED Talk. It is, I repeat, a new model of microfinance for Africa and beyond by Viola Llewellyn. So without further ado, it gives me so much pleasure to welcome she whom I call Auntie V to the Woman Experience. Welcome. Oh, you're muted. Why are you muted? You're muted.
Yeah. I'm supposed to be this big shot in technology and I can't figure out a mute button. What a letdown.
No, that wasn't a letdown. Don't worry.
I'm finally here with you. Thank you.
No, thank you. Thank you for honoring our invitation, because it's not, and I mean, you've been such a good sport about it from the moment I suggested it. You were open to it, and you even had to clear time of your really busy schedule for it. So I truly, truly appreciate that.
I'm very excited to be here. Thank you. You're the
best. I know we're here to talk about, I don't know if people can get that clean. Can you get it still?
I don't hear much of an echo. It seems pretty good at my end.
Okay. And for those who are watching, can you tell me if it's the same at your end? Can you hear my couple or it's just me? Please? I need to know. Thank you. So I know we're here to talk about childhood wounds and traumas and their effect on adulthood, but I really want you to talk a bit about Ovamba. And yes, so tell us a bit more about what Ovamba is, and yeah.
Okay, I'm going to try to use very, very simple language, because I think that it's so important that if you're building something that is supposed to exist beyond your lifetime, you need to have the support and onboarding of other people. We came up with the idea of how to build a business that would help African businesses gain access to capital. And in doing so and raising a friends and family fund, we opened in Douala on July the 2nd, 2014. And the first thing we realized is that we actually do not have a single clue about what we're talking about, because the realities on the ground of African businesses, if you're not there, you really can't talk about it. So it was great to go there and struggle and fail. And at the end of the conclusion, we came to realize there's plenty of money and cash in Africa in general. There is in Cameroon. The challenge is that we're not talking about African businesses in terms of wealth, growth, and how to transfer that wealth to the next generation. The best companies across the continent that are pushing GDP are those who are in trade, if they're importing goods to distribute either as a wholesale or retail or doing manufacturing. Supporting those types of groups is not something that banks do very well. So we came up with a way to do that that did not put capital at risk, because we all know at least one business owner who takes the money from the back to go and build his girlfriend's house or his grandmother's house, instead of actually putting it into the business and repaying the money back efficiently. And we were raising capital from global and institutional investors. So the best way to do that is to find a way to create an algorithm that would understand the culture, the ethnicity, and the reasons why some people are better in business than others, and find a technical way, a digital way to onboard the right customers, understand how their businesses work, buy their goods, import their goods, provide them with technology, warehousing, logistics, so that they can do more selling at profit from the goods that we've helped them to acquire. And that's why we're called a trade tech company. For anybody who wants to go, basically, we do financial inclusion by buying goods for customers and helping them to succeed and grow.
That is really good. I think the echo is from my end from everyone's comments. So that's a bit about Ovamba. And so now that we now understand who Viola is and in whose presence we are in, let's move on to our conversation for today, because we have talked about this a lot behind the scenes. Gosh, the echo is killing me. We have
I can do to help.
No, I don't know what to do, because
am I echoing as well?
No, not at all. You're perfect. It's from my end, but I can't figure it out. I cannot tell you what is causing that. But guys, at least can you understand me, even though there's a echo sound? Can you understand me for the people who are watching? I'm just waiting for somebody to respond. Can you guys understand me, or is that interrupting a lot? Okay, these days we can hear you. So we've been talking a lot, you and I backstage, when we're for this show, about, great, Angeline, thank you very much, about, first of all, this show was inspired by quotes that I put up, where Will Smith said that you cannot achieve your way through your childhood trauma. You have to deal with it. Yeah. And I love the response on it, and I'm glad that you accepted to come on and let's talk about it. So let's talk about the trauma, because I really want us to not talk about like the physical trauma, but those experiences that we go through that we don't even realize are traumatic until we have to make it in the future unfold in front of the therapist. You understand? So let's talk about those not so obvious traumas that we have dealt with as Cameroonians in this instance, and how they affect us. So I'm going to let you lead, because I know that you have quite a lot of experience on this. The floor is yours.
If you imagine that you take a piece of wood, you take a nail, and you take a hammer, and you bang that nail in, even if you pull the nail out, there's still a scar. You can cover it, you can fill it, you can sand it, but the scar will always be there. That piece of wood will always exist. The experience is ingrained. So I think it's brilliant when you say, let's not talk about the physical obvious traumas, because sometimes we can heal from a wound, but what's left behind is an altered mindset, a rewiring of our emotional ecosystem that is supposed to be there to protect us, guide us, and enable us to absorb emotional and physical experience in a way that is healthy. We're all, from the day we are born with only two abilities to begin with, and that is the capacity to experience love and its absence, and the fear of falling. If you take a baby and do this, you'll see it will jerk. So we come with those two things. We're a blank slate, but even though we're a blank slate, we are actually recording everything with no filter whatsoever, from age 0 all the way to around about the age of 5. And that's easy to tell a child anything. They don't have any experience. They don't have a point of reference. They haven't developed that sense of self that creates an agenda by which they want to walk through the world. So as Cameroonians, we laugh a lot. But sometimes I think that laughter covers a multitude of tears. And even when we sit and speak with other Black people, whether they're Africans or Caribbeans or other parts of Africa, there are certain elements that we either refer to with either a sense of pride or dread. And it is often around the strictness of our parents or the way our cultures encase us in expectations that we actually don't have any relationship to and we don't have any input in. We're just born into these circumstances where you have individuals repeating what was done to them decade after decade, millennia after millennia. And I remember reading somewhere, I think it was on Kathleen Dongmo's page, a phrase that completely shook me to my core. And it said, culture and tradition is peer pressure from dead people. So a lot of things that we're doing today are because a bunch of dead individuals who are no longer here said so. They were revered and exalted. We didn't question it because that is our nature. You don't question your elders. You don't challenge. And you just toe the line, because if you step outside the boundaries of or the safety net of that group, whether it's your nuclear family or otherwise, you're on your own. And our society is not really geared towards rugged individualism.
I have to laugh because my mom's watching, and I can just imagine her saying, "Okay, what's this?"
Don't worry, I will confess to everything and I will explain.
Yes. So I see. I like that. I like what Kathleen wrote. So it's peer pressure from a bunch of dead relatives. I'm going to ask the audience: have any of you ever looked at it this way? Because there is that. It is not even an urgency. There is that pressure from our parents to keep tradition and culture alive. We go through that throughout our lives as long as our parents are there. And when our parents pass on, other family members or extended family members find a way to keep us in that. So let's talk about some of those actual traumas, Auntie V, that, like I said earlier, that we are not very conscious of, that we don't understand. Like something as simple as boarding school. Something as simple as those of us who went through boarding school, and the bullying and all of those things that we had to endure that we didn't even realize that could affect us or do affect the adults that we are today.
Sure. You know, when you and I were chatting in anticipation of this very pivotal topic,
you
were so forthright and honest with me, and you asked me where was I born, and I said I was born in London. And then you said, for the sake of individuals talking, there is a requirement that you pre-qualify anything else that comes out your mouth, because they'll say, hey, you bushfaller, you Jane who just came, how much of an identification with us and our culture do you have? And I did explain to you, when I was born in 1966, so if anybody wants to calculate, yes, I'm old, that gives me authority. Actually, that's exactly the kind of trauma we have. We assume that because you're old, you must be really, really smart. But my parents raised me to be very aware that we were Cameroonian. Back then, people were still mailing ndole and dry bitter leaf in the mail, and you could get it at your house. And I wrote to my cousins in Kumba and in Boya and everywhere else. So I had a really distant yet intimate relationship with what it meant to be from Cameroon. My mother, the way she dressed, what she smelt like compared to other people. And my parents are from two different tribes. My father's Bangwa, my mother is Bafo. The way in which they engaged in verbal altercations, which are very loud and emotional, or can sometimes be so steeped in logic that there's no space for an emotional response to anything. So you absorb all of this in the house against the backdrop of being in the diaspora. So you're trying to figure out, how English am I at any moment in time? How African or Cameroonian am I in the next instant? So at the age of 12, my mother took us to Cameroon and I went to Seka. And I went through the traditional boarding school experience, which shaped me to be exactly who I am today, for better or for worse. The first thing that is a trauma that I experienced from the boarding school thing was the idea that there is no adult on your side. None. These are vaulted leaders, almost of angelic status, whose goal is to teach you. But if they teach in such a way that everybody passes, that teacher is weak, they want you to struggle, to suffer. So I began to identify with the fact that part of our culture really reveres pain, suffering, and anything that is negative. If you're too happy, you're smiling too much, you play, you're not paying attention, you're not serious. At what point should a 12-year-old be serious? Serious about what? So that was a trauma that many, especially those who send their children to boarding school very early, because this child is very intelligent. They pass common entrance. This child is a child. They are not ready to be amongst individuals who are 3 and 4 years older than them and are not part of their social development cluster. So that in itself in our boarding school experience is very difficult. And then you're expected to cater for yourself, take care of yourself, literally run your existence as if you're an adult when you haven't had enough of the experiences, especially the hard ones that you need, to cope with being far from home. Not only was it a cultural disaster for me, it emotionally left me thinking that in order to get along with people, I must also become a fighting person, cantankerous, and if I showed the vulnerability necessary to be an authentic person, it will be turned against me. So you learn to tie your face, you learn to chew, you learn to ash when people speak to you, and you learn to build this wall up around you, and that becomes the prison you create for yourself going forward in life.
That is not a pretty picture. And I have never looked at boarding school through those lenses. But then maybe the experience was different for me because I was born and raised in Cameroon.
I saw children and kids who were my age, born in Cameroon, experience something similar because the peer pressure from the older girls to be hard is actually very difficult for them to resist. In fact, let me tell you something else, Goretti. When we left England and went back to Cameroon, I watched as a child, my parents got bullied with peer pressure for things such as you're too soft with your children, you're picking them war, because we were joyful, we would laugh, we would talk. And everybody else is trying to normalize the situation to one that does not create egress or access to something different, because what might come in to the group, they're not ready to prepare with, because again, we're trying to keep the status quo. My parents suffered a lot from being bullied by other adult Cameroonians, to the point that my dad took on other women because only a weak man is only staying in the house with one man. Why are you in the house helping your wife with the children? So you get this complete multi-level, multi-generational ladder of disruptive behavior that becomes the norm. And when you're a victim, you will become a victimizer, because I will admit my behavior in the past has been atrocious.
But you know what? You're saying something that all of us bush scholars need to be aware of, because the ultimate goal is for us to go back home. And I don't know if we've ever thought about what awaits us in terms of the bullying as adults.
Yeah.
What awaits us, because you know that, you can trust to a certain extent that your husband is yours, and only yours, right? But going back to a culture that expects him to be a womanizer, to maintain his manhood, or expects you to be, to not be so soft to your children. I really can relate to that. And that actually has me thinking. I wonder if we are all of us watching this from the West are thinking about this, because this is what awaits us. And okay, that's a bit scary to think about.
Let's fast forward to where we are today. We're a bit more globalized as a group of people. And we have a stronger ability to realize that actually you've got some choices. The thing about the childhood trauma of growing up with Cameroonian parents or within the Cameroon culture is that we're actually blindfolded against choice. We are not taught to value and leverage the power of saying no or yes to something, but we are rewarded for complying. And you comply whether you like it or not. So It's complicit. It is codependent. It creates addictive behaviors that we don't recognize as addictive. And it stops us from having a personal inventory as to who we are and how we feel and whether we like something or not, because the question becomes irrelevant. What do you mean you like? Who asked you even? You don't like it, that's your lookout. This is what we're doing, and that is that. There are no structures outside when you decide to leave, and that happens to battered women sometimes, for what your next step is going to be. So people stay, well, just stay now. And everybody around you does that. Well, just stay. Because it's easy. But it's not easy, really. It's painful. And you pass this on to your children.
I want to ask this question. No, or this comment. Martha says it's not bullying. It's not about being protective. Martha, can you tell us a bit more?
Yeah.
Why
bullying? By that.
Can you clarify that? What you say, it's not bullying. It's clearly, it's peer pressure.
Yes, it's very much peer pressure.
And Elliot says, ask the Cameroonian what do they like or what inspires them or what don't they like. These are simple but hard questions to answer.
Goretti, did we not talk about the experience as a co-founder of Ovamba? I am constantly involved in hiring people. And I don't want to hire individuals who just have book knowledge. I'm looking for individuals who have a sense of self, who see the job as a tool that will enable them to live their best life, because that might mean that, yeah, I'm going to come work for Ovamba for 3 years because there's something else I want to go and do. And that's something that we cherish and ask. So whenever I ask the question, when you were a little kid, what did you want to be? And I've heard people say, I wanted to be a lawyer. I'm like, you're full of crap. No 3-year-old or 5-year-old wants to be a lawyer. At that age, you still believe that you have all the power in the world to be anything you want to be. Your imagination is as wide as the ocean. The best version of yourself is laying down these roots so that you can take your talents, and no matter what job you pick, you're bringing that version of yourself to achieve existence in a healthy way. But the minute you say, this kid very, very smart, you'll be a doctor. Some of the doctors in our countries have no business being near living human beings. They have no sense of empathy. No empathy was shown to them. They have no idea. They're literally psychopaths. But instead, I'm very intelligent, so therefore I'm a doctor. How many miserable doctors do we have in Cameroon? How many careless lawyers do we have? What happens to the kid that wants to be a rap star or a pop star, and the parents are absolutely angry about this? But if that individual succeeds and becomes renowned, you see, I'm very, very happy with my talented son or daughter. We see that. But the journey from imagining to existing across the board in our continent and in Cameroon is completely missing. And it is this gap here that the childhood traumas begin to exist. I was at a funeral last week, and I saw the birth and the death date of this dear friend of ours, and in the middle was a small dash, and it occurred to me, that little dash there is the everything that we did.
Yeah.
It's very scary.
It is. And talking about that, us going up to the things that we were not meant to be, but growing up to literally to please our parents on their goal towards us. A lot of us are literally living our parents' dreams. And I can speak for myself because I was a science student, right? And I was smart in chemistry. I knew a bit of math, but I absolutely hated it. I really did hate it. And all I wanted to be an actor, but I knew that was not going to fly because my younger brother, my immediate follower, was such a talented footballer when he was about 11 to 13. And there was this Guinness football school that had come to they used the word buy him. Once, I think twice. And my dad was like, no son of mine will play football or be a musician. And that was the end of it. But he was such a brilliant footballer. And I look at it, sometimes I look at it and think, oh my God, I wish my father, because my mom, we were lucky because she was a lot more exposed and a lot more, liberal towards our goals. She cared more for your goals rather than, what they wanted. But I see that a lot. I have a lot of friends that have grown up to be exactly what their parents wanted them to be, and they're truly miserable in those professions. And like there's an unfulfillment that you can tell, but they've gone too far in their mind to turn back and do that which they was really them. So they are literally. Can I honestly term that as being traumatized?
It's one of the most primary forms of trauma that we know and don't acknowledge. And I think even going back to Miss Ning, when she said, well, really, it's being protective. But the problem that we have here is that it is the most primary form of childhood trauma repeating itself through the generations. So for all of those unspoken desires and wishes, and the same thing happens in romance, love, and sex in our culture, where you are not allowed to pursue certain things. So you grow up becoming what your parents said. There is a level of dissatisfaction that we sometimes might not be aware of, or we're in complete denial of. So when we think about how unhappy I am, and then you realize I'm now the parent, I have a responsibility to raise a successful child. But really what we're doing is we're using our children as social currency to prove to other people, don't look at my failures or how dissatisfied I am. Look at what I have produced in the world and how great this kid is. And this sense of control that was visited upon me, I'm going to do it to this individual, forgetting you didn't like it. But fear that I will raise a Nancy boy or a kid that looks like they're just not going to fit in our culture going forward. I can't take that chance. So therefore, let me try and protect my child. And the idea that we have as parents is that I'm preparing you for the future. But the irony is, the future you're preparing them for, you're never going to see. You will be dead. You will not generally live past your children. Your children actually are a much better guided missile for the future and what it needs to succeed in it than you. In our culture, it is my hope in addressing childhood trauma that we will instead look at these kids as truly a gift from God. You're not God. You didn't make them. They just grew inside of you. And this child is your best chance at immortality. Your job is to put the sidelines and put the guideposts to allow whatever the best version of that person is to have the tools necessary to do it. And now that we are far more globalized, the other thing that has come up that I consider it to be a bit of a dirty secret in our culture is that you don't have to be one thing. You can be many things throughout your life. It's a journey. It's not a destination, and you're not a bloody tree. You're not rooted in the ground. You can get up, you can go. Once people realize that, it is ridiculously freeing.
See, you're talking and I'm thinking. I'm thinking of my own life. But let me read a few more comments. Kids have very little choices in African households. Not giving them the chance to grow up with a sense of self and confidence. We are shaped by our early childhood experiences.
Completely.
Maria Banga says, all of that trauma is what in my case contributed to my getting married when I had no clue about what I was getting into or if I was ready. Long story, I was diagnosed with PTSD in 2014.
I happen to know Marie, and her story is really a cautionary tale. But let's go to something that they're talking about getting married.
Yeah.
That is childhood trauma to begin with. I remember when I was 6 or 7 years old, my mom, who I've watched her grow and evolve away from her childhood traumas. So she's got a great story in herself. But I remember hearing my mom say, come inside, stop playing. You'll never learn. If you don't learn to cook, you'll never get a husband. Why are we talking about marriage with a 6 or 7 year old child? There is no need. I am supposed to be playing and acting the fool. That's what you do when you're a child. I'm not thinking about doing taxes. I'm not thinking about carpentry. I'm not thinking about cleaning. I'm not thinking about anything other than right now, this moment, which is the healthiest place that you can be. So when you grow up, and especially when your periods start and your body is changing and everybody's behavior around you starts to change. And that sense of caution in a young girl's mind, you're aware that some people are predatory and some people are now going to suddenly decide there's a new set of rules for you compared to boys your age. There will be some clapping for boys that show prowess with the girls. See this one, woman rapper, whatever the case. And mommy might even laugh and say, where is my son? But the girl, sit down, shut your legs, don't be talking, be quiet. Why aren't you this? Why can't you be that? Why can't you be this? And the next thing you know, you are being told to stay away from boys. So you don't get any practice to understand what do I or don't I like in relationships. Who am I against the context of a boyfriend? And not all of these relationships need to be sexual. The word ashawa and aquaro will show up 1,000 times a day. If you're seen outwardly enjoying and admiring somebody who is beautiful to look at, is nice to you, and your sexuality is saying, this is the kind of guy you like. Come 22, 23, after you've been through boarding school, where you're not even allowed to grow your hair, so you don't know how to make yourself look nice. You're utterly confused. Your head is full of books, and you're pretty dumb, and you're going to find yourself lying down in the back seat of a car with one leg in the air, wondering, how the hell did I get here? Well, you got here because you had no practice to figure out what to do when boys do certain things. It's a gradation. And then next thing you know, you're getting married without understanding what does that actually mean? And I never want to be married, but because there's expectations from the currency you represent in the society, you better get married, you better make it look like you're enjoying yourself, and you are going to have a bunch of kids, and when your husband runs around with other women, you will be respected for being quiet. And that taught me nothing. Oh, shut up, say something. Say something.
Elliot says the village will try and protect you by force without giving you a reason or a choice, no matter how old you are.
That's because the village is trying to protect itself.
Yeah. But then but then who are these people that are trying to protect? They are people as well.
Yeah. It's very
So Kathy says, I am one of those. My daddy wanted me to be a lawyer while I wanted to be a journalist. Poor me, I had to read law just to make him happy.
I can totally relate to that. When I was growing up, because I am a talker, I was constantly being told that, well, because you like to talk, you're either going to be a journalist or a lawyer or do something that involves talking. But because I was very stubborn about being clear on who I was, I am doing exactly what I was born to do. I did study sciences, which I enjoyed, but you and I talked, I never ended up going to university. And the fact is, we are capable of being many things all at once. I'm not just science, I'm very arts oriented, but we tend to just divide people down the middle.
Yeah.
I am doing what I'm best at, communicating and talking about things in a way that hopefully makes sense. That is a key element of leadership. So when you see your young daughter tomorrow, talking, don't tell her to show up. Ask her to explain what she's talking about. You may be surprised what you hear.
I like that. And let's go back to when we're talking about young girls who are not even encouraged to explore their femininity. Let's talk about the politics of femininity.
Exactly. We place a lot of value on the female human being in society for many reasons. And even from a religious standpoint, women, whether it's the Holy Mary or whatever the case may be, their chastity and their virtue and their innocence is considered so important. But times have moved on. And even for those who are very super religious, which I'm not, there is a lot of protectiveness that goes on with making sure that girls are okay. Now, in our culture, femininity is not even on the horizon of discussion. Do you remember, Goretti, the days when you would go with your mother to your auntie's house and they grab your hand and they pinch the inside? Che, this became lazier, and because your hands are soft.
Still soft.
But today, people spend time and money going to get their nails done. Oh, my hands are so soft and lovely. Like, yeah, that's great. But the idea of femininity has always existed in African culture, but is very much obscured because of the colonial effect of what it means to become an African. And unfortunately, when you are subject to colonial overlords and you become a victim, you will accidentally absorb the worst of them and start to take some of those values and shove it onto other people in your environment. In school, they cut off all your hair. You are not allowed to think about yourself as beautiful, even though it's a necessary component for confidence. You don't get to do your hair. So when you grow up, and I remember this, you're not really sure what to do with it. You're not sure whether you're supposed to feel pleased at your reflection in the mirror, because if you do, people say, oh, you're vain, or you're lazy, or you're weak, or you are just in a shower.
Yeah, it's always negative.
You are allowed to embrace the best of yourself, yet you are expected to show up confident. These two cannot exist in the same place. Remember what it was like when you're younger. Don't you dare put on nail polish on your hands. I remember as a young person me saying, Che, take that thing off. What are you trying to prove? You want to start attracting men. Yeah. Since when have I never been up to a man and gone, hey, baby, look at my nail polish. Does it give you an erection? It doesn't work that way. It doesn't. But there are parts of our culture that say it does. Now, it's on the one hand, they're really trying to protect you because power in women to prevent men doing damage to them is minimized. So they don't want you to look too ready for sex. Hence, we have female genital mutilation and breast ironing. But we don't have another version to protect us that fits today. We've all seen the amount of rape that's going on right now and the fact that it's difficult for people to talk about it or bring it up. But there is power in femininity. And for some men, it's frightening, especially if you've been raised in a household where your parents aren't talking about these things openly and are not equating equal attention to the growth journey of male and female in the house. How are you as a young girl supposed to find your way through the world, both within a body that is constantly changing, because women's bodies change for the rest of their lives, even post-menopause, but you don't have a point of reference by which to figure out if you're normal, if you're okay, or who to go and talk to when something doesn't feel right. That's hard, and that's a childhood trauma right there.
Yeah. Elvis argues that people can only give what they have. Even in the West, all this liberal and tolerance is relatively new. Even up to today in white Christian families, the children still have to follow the family norm. So in as much as we castigate our parents and their guidance, let's accept that they have the best intentions. In Indian families, this is totally predominant. Asian and Middle Eastern children are far more controlled than African kids. And are we better in terms of riches and professionals?
This is Elvis Paul. He's making some pretty interesting points. One of the things, regardless of religion, is values. What values are you raised with? I was raised Catholic, but I only believe that this much of what Catholics have to say on the meaning of life. And one of the things about childhood trauma is once you've dealt with it, it leaves you free to go on a journey to figure out what is true and where do you fit in the world. That's an important journey to take. One of the things that comes from that is you eventually come full circle to realize your parents are human beings also trying to struggle and find their way. And you can love, and there might not even be anything to forgive if they've made mistakes. They made mistakes in the process of trying to give the best of what they've got. Yeah. But however, the next step after that is the responsibility you take for yourself to figure out those traumas and deal with them, to acknowledge them. And if you're as lucky as I am, to sit down and have those conversations with your parents. Before my dad died 13 years ago, there was what's that term in Pidgin? I moved las belle to talk about everything and anything that I ever wanted. There were no words left between us that were not said. With my mother, I've had that chance to do that too. There was one incident in particular that completely has fractured me as a human being, and I promised I would talk about stuff here. When I was very little, we were on our way to nursery school, and my mother was in a rush, and she had that typical tone that we have when we're dealing with children, where everything is urgent, and there were a bunch of pigeons. And as we walked by them, I was standing looking at them. I'd never seen these things before. And she grabbed my hand and said, hurry up, we've got to go, stop wasting time, we're going to nursery school. The pigeons flew up, the look on her face and that tone, and I became permanently, absolutely petrified of pigeons. I have panic attacks, vomit, fainting, nightmares. I'm 54 years old. I've had to have hypnosis. And my brain tried to provide a reason without being able to visit the reality of that memory and experience. So for many years, I thought that pigeons had attacked me and come on my body, and my mother had to pull me out from underneath them. Because the thing about childhood trauma is your brain will try to keep rewiring to make logical sense of why you may feel so bad about something that your child brain actually cannot rationalize. And that's where you get problems. So once I went through the therapy, I went back to my mom and I said, that pigeon thing, I had finally figured out what really happened that day. She said, oh yeah, I remember. So that thing has literally held me so frightened and captive that there were days I could not leave the house. I couldn't go to a new town. All day, all night, not being able to go out in the sunlight because I'm afraid of something that happened as a misunderstanding.
Yeah.
That situation is minor compared to those who go through excessive beating, rape, sexual abuse, hunger, or anything else that will arrest the wiring in your mind. And when it's at its worst, what happens is your development is stunted and halted at that point. You're not able to grow in the right way. You're always stuck in that silo of what happened, and it keeps changing with you as you go through life. I'm lucky. I got to deal with that, and I'm lucky that I have an awareness that I can say to myself, oh, something I'm doing is irrational, or I think I know where it came from, or I need to go and find out.
So taking it back to Elvis's points that he's saying that we shouldn't necessarily blame the parents. Take it further. So that happened to you due to what your mom did, but you know better than to do the same thing to your child, right? So if we take it a step further from your explanation, because Elvis keeps arguing that African parents are far tolerant. He's comparing us with the Asians. At least we don't have honor killings in Cameroon as we see among. Yeah, we are not those extremes, but it doesn't make our trauma any less difficult for us.
Let's go back to what I said at the beginning. You're banging a nail, you're pulling it out. After a while, it actually becomes futile to compare pain and damage, because pain and damage is pain and damage. And there isn't any one group that is worse or better than another. Every group has its version of this in some way, shape, or form. Plus, I think it's dangerous to totally generalize. And if I've done that, I apologize. I also will challenge you, Elvis, and say it's very easy, especially we do this as Africans, to look somewhere else is better than us, instead of looking internally to find out, can we find the best version of us and live authentically the way we possibly could? Is there a dream or a vision of us as we are that is better than where we are today? And that's when culture can move a group of people forward. I don't think that Asians or Indians are any better than us. We have honor killings in Cameroon. They're just not done in the same way, but they do involve somebody being dead at the end for reasons that are stupid. Goretti, how many times have we seen, even on Facebook, some man sitting there because he has murdered his wife and children, or in America, you've murdered people and you've killed yourself, or any of those things. It looks different. It's the same cocoa soup. It's the same thing. Human beings are not that different from each other.
And I'll challenge you a little bit further, Elvis, and ask you, what is so wrong with us being more tolerant than our parents were with us? What's so wrong with that? Because all we're doing is, and this is still childhood trauma, all we're doing is trying to stop that which was done to us that really traumatized us, trying to put an end to it, and not making it out on our children. So what is wrong with that? And I don't want anybody watching this to think that we're trying to blame our parents. We're trying to understand some of the things that we've gone through that without even thinking about it, we do not realize that these things have shaped us, our adulthood, sometimes negatively.
Well, like we said, most parents are good, loving, and are doing the best with what they got at the time under those circumstances, which is why I said, once you've gone through the process, you can come out and you'll say, oh, you know what? They were really trying their best under the circumstances. And there will be a version where they point fingers at us from our children. They're up here at every level. And I think most parents successfully do it, is to improve upon what happened to them.
Yeah.
I think that the extreme trauma, it may actually not be as prevalent as we think, but the fact is we're throwing the floodgates open to consider and accept that, yes, it does happen. There are lots of things, for example, that my mother used to do that she does not do with her grandchildren today.
Yes.
A lot of parents like that, right?
Yes.
That's them growing through watching the effects of trauma or gaining wisdom and insight and realizing, you know what? The things that we used to get upset about are not that really big a deal.
Yeah.
And then there's the fact that we have many Cameroonian and African parents today who understand, I need to raise this kid to live in a much bigger world than Limbe, Victoria, Boya, Mutengene.
Yeah.
Back then, we didn't go to many places. So you're trying to comply with living in a small space. We've got different objectives now. We do take our culture along with us. It is pretty portable, but it does change when new information comes along to inform the choices that are available to us.
So how do we find our way out of this trauma? And I think before I even go there, I want to say that you said that some of this, what we consider trauma may not be as prevalent as we think. I think that it is prevalent. We just haven't looked inside. We just haven't looked inside.
For things now.
Sorry, I didn't catch.
We have names for things now.
Exactly. And I think that if a lot of us are honest to ourselves, we would be able to recognize a lot of the things that we know for sure that have affected the person we are today. And I'm going to use myself as an example. As in the saying, awareness is key. As a young child, around the ages of 8, I was taught a lot that I was called a lot. I was called Aquara a lot. From the age of 8, it was 7. I was in class 3 in primary school, and I haven't forgotten. Class 2, class 3. It was like this Aquara picking can't stay in the house, and they'll use that word, and it shaped the way I saw intimacy a lot. And not for the positive, in the sense that, okay, I knew that I was definitely never going to be an Aquara. You know, I was that for the positive, that was it. But in some instances, it made me kind of frigid.
Yeah.
You understand? And then when I decided to say, it really did affect me, and not in a good way. And I'm saying that a lot of us are living with these things without really being honest or looking inside to understand how words, actions, big things, you know, boarding school bullying have affected us. If we really took an honest look into our lives, we would know for sure that we were traumatized at some point. And I think that, and I'm hearing you, Cecilia, Dr. Gender is saying the reality is everyone has from their level of awareness. And I think when we say our parents were wrong, we don't blame them, but we merely say they were wrong, but there's a better way out now. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly what I'm saying. And I think that we should be honest to ourselves so that we put an end to such behavior. And there's nothing wrong in being better parents than your parent was to you. There's nothing wrong with that, being a better parent to your child. It doesn't make you not love or respect your parent anymore. It just means that you have learned from their mistakes and you're not letting them move forward.
You have to have open dialogue for these kinds of difficult conversations. I guarantee you there will be some parents who are not up to the task of a review of their performance. That would literally a family. So it might not be an option for some people. But everybody has the ability to do a self-inventory, to take some time to get to know yourself all over again. It's a hard job. Maybe this is why therapy is such a meaningful thing in some parts of the world. And I see it is beginning to grow as a profession in Cameroon and other parts of Africa. But the ability to really deep down inside ask yourself whether you liked something or didn't, what you really wish you were doing right now, how you feel about yourself. And another key one is, are you aware of how people are experiencing you? when you're interacting them? What version of you is out at play when you're speaking to your spouse, to your friends, an ex, a child, people in authority, which is a big problem for many of us, because you were kept so squashed down for so long that even when you become in charge, you will have imposter syndrome, because there's a part of you that is still doing this because that's what you thought that was your reaction to things that were above you or people who are in authority. So you have to start with asking yourself a lot of very difficult
questions. Yes. Oh yeah. Oh, I know about imposter syndrome. So yeah. So I think we're going to move on to that, because Tessie asked, "How do we heal from the trauma?"
That's a great question. Everything starts with acknowledging, quantifying, talking about it, and coming to terms. And then, if you're able to, replacing it with something new. For example, if you grew up in a household where alcoholism or drug use or any kind of addictive behavior was taking place, the first thing that you may come to understand is the reason why you don't like addiction or why you are hurt by it is because it actually robbed you of the individual and their role in your upbringing. So you get to understand that. Secondly, you may decide, I absolutely hate alcohol, and that's fine. You're never going to drink it. But the problem that you have to be aware of is that, especially with women, is we accidentally recreate the traumas that we were running from because we didn't have an alternative reality to that which we experienced. So really important when you go through that process of understanding and realizing what you don't like is to exercise your power to say, I might not know what I do like, but I know what I don't like. And that's just as important as what you're against. And you have to also understand that it might take you the rest of your lifetime to heal. Give yourself the space and love yourself. Learning to love yourself. Listening to you, Goretti, when you talk about that thing, Apara, it is absolutely unconscionable to take an 8-year-old child and assign them with such a label when they're not sexualized. And you have to ask yourself, what was the individual trying to get for themselves? What satisfaction, what emotional void was so gaping that you gain satisfaction from doing that to an 8-year-old child? And that's the other side of what do you do with childhood trauma, is you turn around, you take a look at who did it and see whether as an adult now, do you understand? Can you come up with a justifiable, logical reason to help you make sense of it? I remember asking my mum once upon a time, Mum, did you really like us when we were little? And she said, but yes, I loved you. I said, but it's only later on that you became comfortable with saying, I love you. And I learned a lot from her when she gave me the responses to that. And I remember asking other adults who were prevalent and very close to us in our life, asking them questions. Now that we're adults, and the one question that I asked an aunt is, if you had met me, the age I am now, would you have ever wanted to be my friend? And she just stopped. So what kind of question is that? I said, it's a simple question. Because I'm trying to figure out, I know it's easy to love me, but do you actually like me? Because I need to know that. Because I need to understand where some of the incidents from when you used to come visit with us, what was that based on? I need that for me, not because I'm trying to rescue you. As it turns out, she couldn't answer your question, so I know the bitch hated me, and that's fine. And that was very healing, because I thought, I knew it. Oh, cool. We can go on from here. I don't need to kiss your butt anymore. You're you, I'm me, your circus, your monkeys. And I remember, and here's another thing from childhood. Anybody listening, look back to the days when your parents would have this auntie, this uncle, and they come and they immediately put them on this pedestal. And a child has a way of looking at the world that's very different from adults. And you ask yourself, why did my parents want this individual to be considered such a respected individual in our lives when now that I'm an adult, that individual is a complete idiot? And I have had that laundry list of individuals that came to our house. I've asked my mom, did you actually really like them? Why did you letting them in the house? And my mom said, well, you know, that's how we do. I said, would you allow them back in again? And she said, actually, no. Okay, cool. So you've got to take the time as an adult to review the things of childhood through the adult lens now in order to help yourself to gain understanding, because that's where everything begins.
And I think that truly that's where the healing begins.
That is exactly it. It's where the healing begins. Everything is possible in the light of truth. Everything.
Truth. That's a big thing for us.
Yeah, we're not good at truth in our culture.
Yeah,
we're good at versions. We're good with you don't need to know. Don't ask questions. All of those things. And that brings us to what are we doing with our kids today, Goretti? Back then, you could raise your children successfully on fear and shame.
Yes.
Information, half truths, and no information.
Yeah.
Shut up, do what I say. You don't need to know. Why are you asking questions? Today, you cannot do that. Your child will die if you do not supply them with honest answers. Now, today, and our parents didn't have to do that. They did what they could then. It was appropriate for them. Doesn't work today.
The culture is changing somewhat. I want to read some more. Well, let's say, so what are some tips you can give in having a conversation with African or Cameroonian parents in a bid to deal with trauma? I tried having a conversation with my mother about a traumatic childhood experience to let her know how I felt, and she shut me down. Our parents are usually obsessed with the fact that they were giving you their best. They were giving you their best and doing the best they could, that they ignore how certain behaviors may have affected their children.
I truly understand exactly what you mean and where we're coming from. And that's why I said some of these conversations could completely implode a family to smithereens. And the fact that maybe your mum is not that open means that she's got her own traumas that she's not dealt with. The only thing you can do at this point going forward is raise your children differently and treat yourself differently and acknowledge that you have some issues, some things have happened to you. Or even, the interesting thing that I also found is there is a version of this conversation that works for our culture that from Mukala land, from Oyibo land, does not work, okay? Yeah. When you sit down and you have a conversation where you allow the parent to tell stories of their childhood, if you listen very carefully, you will hear between the lines. So you might not be able to come and say, here's a cup of tea, let's have a conversation about such and such and such and such, because that head-on approach is going to shut things down. But over a period of time, and I used to use alcohol on my mother to do this, I'm not ashamed to say, you will end up having a conversation about their childhood that comes through. Because as you get to be an adult post-trauma, you're actually given a gift. Yeah. You can become a version of a friend to your parents that they never thought they could ever have. And only you, the you that heard their heartbeat from the inside of her body during those 9 months, have a direct line of access that no other human being can get to. And that's from being a child in child version as an adult of, Mom, tell me a story about, hey, remember this? And if you're lucky, your parents may be open to telling you the stories of their childhood. And in that, you might hear what you're looking for.
Yeah, I used that approach with my dad a lot before he passed. I used to always
with my mother. I ply her with Mimbo. She talks.
Yeah. My dad would tell me, my dad was very such an introvert, quiet man, and he didn't talk too much, but I could get his childhood out of him, and it was it was not the best of time. I mean, it was a really tough one, but I could understand why he became the man he was, who was satisfied in the simplest way. And I think we have that. We have that with our mom, which is great. It's really great because personally, like I said, I'm very curious and I'm very inquisitive. I've been like that since I was a child. And I always want to understand why people behave the way they do. And I think that's what has helped me to forgive and a lot of the things that were truly traumatic in my childhood, because I have and I agree with what you're saying. I've tried to look at it from my my current adult view, and I see that I can understand why these persons behave this way and what they do. So I think that if we cannot get it directly from them, I love your idea. Find a way,
Or ask other people.
yes, or ask other people.
Yeah, in speaking to my mom's relatives, I really got to understand how she was 7 years old when her mother died. Her father was a wonderful man, very gentle, loved all of his children. He was quite exceptional considering. But he took in another wife who was a little cold and unkind. And then there was a second woman who was kind of nice to my mom. So that was always there. So that distance was really difficult for her to surmount. And in order to protect herself, she became quite a rowdy young person. But later on, she became slightly reticent and didn't want to attract too much attention to herself. And she married her first boyfriend, frankly. And we've had a lot of, that's my dad. We've had a lot of conversations. And those questions have covered every single topic you can imagine. And it was because I watched her grow up away from everything she knew in the UK in the 70s, where she developed her own personal culture. And it was one that was inclusive, a little stern, but that's fine. But I really like her as a person. I love my mom. I like her as a person.
That's a question we should ask our moms if they actually like our children.
Because you know what? Sometimes our kids are horrible. I have had 3 daughters and 1 son. There were times when my daughters, I'm not liking you right now. I love you. Don't like your behavior. And that's the thing. We have to make a difference between the human and the behavior.
Yeah. Yep, that's very important. I just want to read this statement comment, which goes back to our Aquara. She says, same here, since I was taught Aquara too, to a point where I got raped and pregnant, but didn't have the courage to tell anyone but my best friend and now husband. What really made me angry at the world was the fact that I was innocent.
Is the fact that you were what?
She was innocent. She was innocent. She was raped.
It's so easy to blame the victim.
Yeah.
Some of those traumas are never going to go away, unfortunately. I am so sorry to hear that. And it is such a common story. It happens so often. I was attacked on my way home from school as a kid in England in the 70s. The man came and put his hand on my throat, slammed me up against the wall, and was undoing the zipper of his trousers. I fought, I kicked, I screamed, I ran away. I ran immediately to a friend's house and told her mother, and we went straight to the train to the police station. The first thing the police did was claim that I didn't know what I was talking about because I was 10 years old, and they asked me, how old was this person? And I said, somewhere between the age of 19 and 21. That's a very narrow age group for a child to assess how old somebody was. So at that point, they started to laugh. They said, what do you know about age? I said, well, I think you're 26. The woman's face went white. Came back with the supervisor, detective. I was spot on. You see, we can give our children such an amazing ability to command confidence and respect, even at the age of 5, because it's really just about how well do you occupy your age of development as you move from one to the next. So they knew it was true. But this kid here, the next day, I was out with my mother's kitchen knife looking to stab that dude. And it was the same thing that happened when we used to live in Limbo behind the motor park, was right off Church Street. And one man was packing up his stall and reached out, and I think it was either me or my sister, touched our breasts and said, Bobby Tana. We were furious. Our bodies are not your toys. We came back with mortar pestle the next day, beat the crap out of him because you're not getting away with it. My parents did raise us to have a sense of do what you can. Be confident, especially my dad. My dad always used to say to me, there's nothing wrong with thinking you're better than other people, as long as you can prove it. And so that was the most empowering message of my childhood. Other people, they don't want you doing that kind of thing. You're creating an inconvenience for them. And so therefore, it's never about rescuing yourself. It's about the inconvenience to others. But I have even raised my own daughters. Don't let anybody do anything to you that you don't want. Ever.
Yeah. So let me read some comments. The problem of misplaced non-existent boundaries is schizophrenic in the African culture.
Wow.
That's from India. Mm-hmm.
Yes, it. Oh my goodness me. I have a niece. I think you saw a movie clip of he and I on the beach talking about weight, and I gave her some very specific instructions. I filmed it and I put it on. There is a habit of people coming up to children and touching their heads. You're reducing a child's ability to have healthy boundaries in a world where dangerous things happen. You don't give a child a sense of agency for self. And when, especially for boys, I mean, we talk about girls a lot, but little boys also need to understand agency of self, protection of self. You don't want these boys growing up thinking that everybody's body is a playground. Yeah. And it's true, because sometimes if a parent wants to protect their child, other adults actually make them feel bad about it. And that's the peer pressure we were talking about.
Yeah. Yep, yeah, we talked about that agency of self. Actually, do you want to explain a bit more what you mean by agency of self? I remember when we talked about that, I asked you to explain it to me because I didn't really understand it.
It's a very simple concept. An agent is a representative on behalf of something or someone or a process. Mm-hmm. We ought to have agency of ourselves. Here's a great example. Take what happens in Cameroon when somebody is sick and they go to the doctors. The doctor does whatever, and the person comes back and you ask them, what did the doctor say? They say, I was sick. Did you ask the doctor what was wrong with you? No, they just gave me medicine. What medicine did they give you? I'm going to the pharmacy. Still no answers, right? Mm-hmm. What is this medicine supposed to do? Oh, the doctor gave me. No agency of self says they are not invested in themselves with enough confidence to say, what is this? Why do I need it? Explain this to me so I can understand. Where you put yourself so central to your own sense of self and health and safety and wellness that you don't just allow anybody anyhow to come around here. But the number of us in our culture, because we're not allowed to ask questions in childhood, will go into adult and allow doctors to do all kinds of things to us that could be dangerous. And as you know, there is no governing body in our country that says you are responsible for the death of an individual. But if you had personal agency and you say, I'm not taking this medicine until you explain it to me, or you sit there and you say, I need to understand, I don't get it. Or you take, like I do, take my laptop and Google, and the doctor says something, I check and correct. You have to have agency for yourself. So many women have died, especially childbirth, all of these things. Or even you hear somebody's died. What happened? Fever. Fever from what? He was sick. There's 1,000 things that can kill you, and you don't know more than 2 of them. That's no agency of self. We have to advocate.
And we have to pass that on to the children now.
Exactly. Because the children think that in order to comply and to be rewarded for behavior, that this is the best example to emulate. We are all subject to the stimulation of what feels good. And that brings us to more childhood trauma. Beating children are necessary. I'm not talking about a spanking on the bottom, but no child likes that. And it is not connected to the act that you're trying to correct. Learning is all about taking one piece of information and connecting it logically to the next and the next and the next, so that you have a chain of understanding and you can own the information to use it or leverage it in a positive way. But if the child does something wrong and you beat them, all they know is, I got beaten, but I don't know why I shouldn't have done that. So the punishment doesn't fit the mistake I made, and I don't get to learn from it. All you learn from that beating is, I must do this thing again and not get caught. At least that was my reality. So that doesn't work.
Yeah. And then you have truants at home.
Oh, yes. And very heady children, as they call them, because they just get used to it.
Yeah. Maria Banyo says so much on learning anew, and so much compassion for yourself and others too.
She's absolutely right. We're taught in church to love our neighbors as we love ourselves, but we rarely are taught how to love ourselves. We're all born with emotions, but you have to be taught what to do with them. And if you don't have somebody teaching you that, your trauma will just continue to multiply as you don't get the end result of what you truly desire. So when you ask somebody, is what you're doing right now making you happy? They often can't answer because they really don't know what happy is.
Yes, we talked about that, didn't we? Yes.
You did. They don't know what it is. You can go into your 50s, 60s, and 70s and reach the grave, and you still have no idea what could make you happy. That's a waste of a life. It's so sad.
And when you go to Cameroon, especially visiting now as a stranger, kind of, and you look at Cameroon, honestly, about 98% of the people look miserable. Even the so-called successful and the rich ones.
We are suffering from low-grade depression throughout the entire country. It's pervasive. It seeps into everything. But here's what I say about that. There is one habit that I would recommend that we learn as a culture, and that is to know the difference between political and civil. We have a habit of combining them into one thing. So we get angry and upset when Bia, who we keep looking at for leadership, he's not a leader, he's a politician. No politician can disrupt or take away your ability to be loving and kind to your friends, your child, your neighbor. That is not a political act. That's your choice. That's you. If more people had that kind of engagement with each other that was based on honesty, openness, no matter what BS the government does, the individual's lives would be a little bit better. But it is very difficult to be happy in a country or a society when no parent in Cameroon can wake up and tell their child, you can be anything you want to be. No, they cannot. They really cannot. There are so many layers that will prevent you. You can't go and be the president. And here's another thing. It sounds as if it's not related, but think about this in our culture. If a crime happens in Cameroon, no police officer has been educated on how to collect evidence, go to a database, and find information to prove what is true. So everybody runs around in the dark, adhering to the most dishonest levels of lack of evidence in order to come up with a conclusion, which will lead to further confusion. We are in a tangled mess. So we are always depressed. We're in a bad, bad place. But as human beings, we actually can alleviate that a little bit by choosing to behave in a certain way towards ourselves and to other people. The government cannot take that away from us.
Elliot says, when you end up doing something that makes you happy, the village acts like you need their approval for your happiness.
That village man needs to be taken in hand. But here's the thing, Elliot, we are the village.
Yeah. And Wella says, absolutely true. We're all suffering from low-grade depression. And then goes on to say, they'll say that's a white man term. Happiness is a white man term. I'm laughing, but I think when I went to Cameroon recently, that was the first thing I noticed. Everybody was just angry.
Yeah, they are. They answer questions with questions. Because the people are angry. They're very, very broken and hurt.
Yeah, but the memory I have of my childhood, well, I mean, I grew up in Yaoundé and then Boya, but I don't know if sometimes I'm confused if the memories I have are real or made up, because it felt like a happy childhood, right? And I felt like
when I lived in Cameroon between 1978 and 1982, the streets were cleaner. Yeah. There were fewer cars. There wasn't as much trash piled up. People said good morning. Going to Douala was a big deal. People were afraid of girls from Tico for some reason. Going to Kumba was a full-time commitment that meant you're not coming back today. People said good morning. Even the woman that sold you puff puff spoke with an elegance. It was very, very different. Yes. I know that my next comment is going to be unpopular, but it's a fact. The minute that the road from the other side of the Mongo came with a certain type of individual across, we got a little bit adjusted. Plus, how our culture has grown. You can't stay happy for that long when things are that bad. People had agency. They could get up with an idea and make something happen. And now we've got a globalized modern youth group that are expecting a lot more, yet we still insist on pieces of paper with cachet. And these individuals want to send an email and get the world finished in a day. The two don't match. Everybody in our country is suffering from extended childhood trauma because the leaders keep banging in the nail. What are you supposed to do? The only thing we can do is turn to each other with a lot of love and care, understanding what we're going through, and change a consciousness of how we behave with each other.
As Inda says, the saddest part of trauma is when it becomes a generational pattern.
Oh my word, is she so true? And speaking again too.
And the moment we are an aggressive community because of our suffering and traumas. Just
yeah, please don't make a T-shirt with that because it's so true.
Okay, so my God. So going back to what you said about agency of staff and doctors, B says, I recently lost a brother in hospital in Cameroon, and when I asked what medications and the treatment plan, I was sadly told we don't ask such questions here to doctors and nurses. They will abandon your patient. I still live with those lines in my head daily. And but Cecilia, who is a medical doctor in Cameroon, says about the doctors, I think things have changed, and doctors want patients to be more enlightened about their conditions.
Thank goodness.
Google and ask, but many of these patients are still unable to believe they have the power. And sometimes because we like hiding things, they don't want to tell people the person died of cancer, HIV, etc. It's easier to say someone killed them through witchcraft. So again, that agency of self, I think that's something, especially if you're working from Cameroon, that is something that we need to start educating people on. Doc, Cecilia, I'll put that, I'll give you that responsibility.
Right. It's very, very difficult. And people don't want to abandon their beliefs when they don't have anything else to cling to.
Yeah.
It's hard. There are examples of that. One of the things that I've tried to remind myself, especially when I'm not amongst Cameroonians, is to not only focus on the negative about our culture and our country, because we really are very good at complaining. But finding solutions is something that people like to throw their hands up in the air, and then there'll be another group that want to laugh at those who are trying to find solutions instead of trying to join the effort. So you have to really fight for your space and the agency of yourself and your business, your community, your beliefs, in order to keep on pushing. Ovamba has been in existence 7 years, and we've been in Cameroon for 6. And there are loads of people who said to me, you're an idiot. Cameroonians are all thieves. And I said, so you're a thief and I shouldn't know. No, not me. Well, how's that supposed to make sense? There were loads of people that said you shouldn't do this. But the thing that I have learned about how trauma has affected our country is when you don't have a belief in tomorrow, you want to chop for today. It's a poverty mindset. I am aware that I will not see the end of this journey. Ovamba is supposed to go on after I'm dead. It's supposed to go on to feed others, to help people grow, satisfy careers, and create growth. And because we are in a childhood sense of poverty, when you are poor, you want to eat everything right now. You don't have the luxury or the largesse of spirit to think, let me go beyond my existence to communicate and to build something, an edifice to legacy. So we don't have a lot of legacy building in our community. We have a lot of individuals who, because of what they went through in childhood, being pressured and wanting to show I'm a big man, look, I've got all my wealth on my back, and you don't want to get life insurance while you're alive and you're waiting, even though you're dead, for people to throw you a massive die house party. We don't have a sense of life beyond ourselves. That is another thing that comes from having these kinds of childhoods. We don't have the ability to see past ourselves. And that's how poverty exists.
And exactly, because that brings me around again to Will Smith comment, which says you can't achieve your way out of this mindset.
No, you can't.
You can't.
Beautiful statement. Yeah, because if we could, Africa would be full of really, really successful people.
Yeah.
And we're not.
Yeah.
So something else is missing. Everything starts with this. Whatever you believe here is what you will manifest in life. And whatever the surroundings are reflecting back at you, that's what you will emulate before you develop your own personality and your sets of choices. And if that's negative, then that's going to be really bad for a very long time until you come to some sort of recognition that you don't like where you are in your life or in your world.
Yeah.
It's just the way it is.
I was going to read Goretti and Viola. What about the current global depressing news? Look at the UK, the USA, EU, Brexit, Black Lives Matter. Where do we go to?
To hell at this point. I'm sorry. I don't know. This is all I can tell you in sincerity. I've figured out how to answer the question of Black Lives Matter from those that will say all lives matter. I have figured out that although I'm born in the UK, I live in America, that in actual fact, I can go anywhere in the world that I want to. I've had to reconfigure the inside of my head in order to deal with the outside world and what's going on around it. The only thing I know how to do is to build a business that will help others and remember to treat people with love and kindness. And if I don't like them, to just avoid them. I think most people will try to find that as a panacea for the fact that we can't change everything.
Yeah.
And we have to accept that. Some people are not wired or born to change a damn thing. They're just who they are.
Yeah.
And there are those that, they're the lions. They will change everything. You got to find your place in this world and figure out what good can I effect. And that's it.
That's it. Maggie says, we are just survivors of the fittest. Looking back at the environment most of us were raised, where you are shut down, you can't express yourself, how you feel if something negative happens to you. I reminisce on my life back home, what I have gone through in the society, and comparing it with my life now in the US. I just say, Lord, thank you for giving me another chance.
That's wonderful. That's just brilliant. Good for you.
Mabi says, I think we do see beyond ourselves. Our parents sent us to school. Why? So we could be on our own 2 feet if they are no more. They sacrificed, built homes for their families, etc.
I want to challenge that.
Go on.
Mabi, I know I don't know you, so forgive me if I am affecting you in a way that you don't like. Part of the childhood trauma of being an African and Cameroonian is that we view ourselves through the lens of just what our education gets us, not who we are without it. You are not born a lawyer. You're not born a doctor. You're not born an engineer. You're not born a secretary. You're not born any of those things. You're born a human spirit. And you come to this earth with certain gifts that you can enhance, that you can give to other people. Yes, our parents do send us to school. But if you interpret your existence on this planet only through the lens of what you learned in school, you have completely negated everything about you as a human being. The question you have to ask yourself is, who am I without my education and my qualifications? It's not written across your forehead when you walk down the street. It does not say BS in mathematics. It does not say a child of a 2-story dwelling in Mambanda. It doesn't. Who do you show up in the world that people can identify who your personality is and how they have to interact with you and experience you? So yes, thank you, parents. You're supposed to send us to school because school is part of the toolkit to bring out the best or sometimes the worst of who you are. And that's what we don't talk about in our culture. We completely obliterate the human being and we exalt and champion, my Pekin get 10 A levels, but your kid's a rapist. And my Pekin don't get 2 this. Yeah, but they don't actually like you because you don't reveal yourself as a human being to your child. Your child doesn't get to learn how to struggle by watching you share when it hurt and when you survived, when it wasn't good, and now it's much better. They don't see the human in you. They see the automaton who gives instructions, and they struggle to satisfy that so that they can have what? An education? Yeah, that's all very nice. But now who are you?
Well, Mabi goes back to say, but that is a philosophy that is Western. We are learning. We cannot negate the values our parents instilled in us.
And neither should you. The question you have to ask yourself is, do the values your parents gave you get you where you want to go? If the answer is yes, good for you, honey. Rock on. That's your circus, your monkeys. But for some people, that is not the case. And therefore, they have a journey to go. And you can also ask yourself, what additional values have I brought into our family's culture that have given us all something to make our lives better? If you've got great answers for that, good for you too. That means that these comments are not aimed at you. But there are many individuals who grew up in a household where there is a paucity of values, where you're looking at things from the standpoint of white man, non-white man. Unfortunately, that's the trick of a colonial situation where everything becomes a binary situation of black, white, good, bad, old, young, educated, not educated. In between that continuum is space for you to be you. And that's not a bad thing, regardless of skin color.
Bimuma says, I think we should talk about how to cope with trauma and behaviors that can indicate past trauma, triggering situations that can keep people suffering, and where to get help and how to prepare for this emotionally.
Absolutely brilliant. Goretti, we talked about this, didn't we?
We did, yes.
And we've been talking now about identifying and being able to actually identify what this thing is. One of the first things about trauma, besides the physical things like a child who suddenly goes back to bedwetting, or an individual who doesn't want people to touch them, or an inability to look people in the eye or to smile or find joy, are individuals who keep on executing behavior repeatedly, regardless of the circumstances, because they're looking for a way to manage internal emotions, because they don't have a toolkit to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. When you see that in somebody, that there is trauma. And some people mistake the happy, smiling, strong person who never has a bad day as being strong and great. No, that's actually not normal. You are supposed to feel bad sometimes, but it's not meant to last forever or make you not want to wake up in the morning. You're supposed to be happy and elated sometime, but you don't use that excuse to go out and drink 10 Trantrat. You have ways of being balanced. You're looking for balance. Trauma comes in so many ways that I don't think this is the platform or the forum by which we go through the entire thing. But everybody here, and this is when you asked me, Goretti, will you be making references to any academic pieces? And I said no, because first of all, we are all capable of understanding our own psychology just by figuring out, how do I feel? Why do I feel that way? And talking to other people. Yes, you should seek help for trauma. If it's your church or your friend or your spouse or a therapist, if something that you do helps you to feel better and do better on a daily basis, then stick with it.
I hope that answered your question, B. Manka says, I think our panel should give more credit to those living and working in Cameroon and Africa. We are moving forward after all. We are not where we used to be.
So true. This conversation was about trauma. I know many people in Cameroon who are amazingly advanced from just their natural innate self, not because they went abroad or read a fancy book. And some of those people, without them, my life would not be what it is today. Neither would my business be where it is today. I've had the pleasure of hiring some of them. I've had the pleasure of dining with some of them. There are plenty of individuals who are doing well. This conversation isn't about them. Those individuals are the signposts along the way that we all can find a way to do well. And we should celebrate them, because in being balanced, and I said earlier about not wanting to be part of a culture of complaint and only talking about what's wrong, there are many people. I've referenced somebody who's given me so many points of stimulation and encouragement. Even you, Goretti, the fact that you have this show is a point for that. There are loads of them, and I would encourage you all to recognize them and to bring them up to those of us that were not born there, because I know a lot of people, but this conversation is not necessarily about them.
Wow, this has been really good. I'm trying to think if we've missed any other thing on our list of things we're supposed to talk about.
Viola is I'm sorry, I did not hear you.
Oh, I think Wele is responding to Manka. She says, I don't think the panel is not recognizing that. However, this conversation is important for the few who haven't evolved or who are still evolving.
Actually, let me address something that Wele is saying that is true. And you mentioned it maybe about 15 minutes ago. There are people in our society who we always reference, especially in, I hate using the word Anglophone, but in the Northwest and Southwest, there are families and people who are a part of our folklore and history who people look to as absolutely wonderful. Those are the kinds of people that I think about, Wele, who have done a lot, not just for themselves, but for other people's children, for their society. They've made things so much better. So they are there. If anything, I would say, and I would challenge you to remember them in your own family and make sure that your children know about them.
Yeah, I like that. I like that, actually. Yeah. I think I will do that. Find those people who are, I will use the word role models.
Total roles. I know plenty of them.
Yeah.
And going abroad does not necessarily make you more self-aware. How many Cameroonians do you know leave Pays, go abroad, and spend every weekend going from occasion to occasion with shooting case box, looking for Miondo, and then they go back to their job at 7-Eleven or working in a hospital, even though that's not what they came to do. And then they go back, they may as well have never left the village. So, yeah.
Yeah.
We are there. It's not about being abroad that makes you aware. It's about your emotional maturity.
True. And it's a journey. It's a journey.
It's a beautiful journey.
Yeah. And I really hope that for the few of us who have learned what we have learned here tonight, we can take it on and pass on the knowledge, because it's what we just think to do is create kind of a reawakening within our network.
Yes.
And the change will happen.
Absolutely. People like you, people like Adelines today, people like even Rebecca in Nonchong, people like the filmmaker in I've never spoken to him directly, but I think he's brilliant. There are so many people. And what about some of the grandmothers and grandfathers who sit there with their pipe and charcoal and you have a conversation with them, with the amount of wisdom,
yeah,
total wisdom, that and you think to yourself, oh my goodness me, these people are leaving us. The late Mrs. Ifimba, they are there. They're not forgotten. If not for them, maybe things would be worse.
Thank you so much. This has been, oh my gosh, sorry. This has been a really, what did I just do? I got so comfortable.
Oh, that's okay. Are you all right over there?
I am sorry, guys. But yeah, no, thank you guys so much. People are still joining right now at the end. I don't even know what to do, but so many of us have stayed to listen to the conversation, and I'm really glad. Honestly, Auntie V, thank you so much for your time. I know that you only have 2 hours. We're talking an hour and 45 minutes, an hour and 40 minutes of your time, but it's much appreciated. If there are any final questions from the from the comments.
Clementine.
Somebody asked me, you guys, no. No, I just moved. Sorry. So Goretti, there's a topic I will recommend if you have not discussed. Okay, yeah, I'll come to that, Elvis. I just really want to thank Viola so much for your time tonight. This has been a really, really enriching conversation and enlightening in so many ways. And it's a conversation I think will reveal it, because when you start trying to we're not necessarily just creating awareness, but trying to create a reawakening, you have to do it over and over again until it reaches the ends of the world. So if you're watching this, make sure you share it on your page. Share it at least on your page, please, so many others can watch and learn from what we're trying to do here today. Good job, Viola. Love your discourse. The accent was great and beautiful. That's someone from America. You know, they always love.
Maggie, thank you. I swear, we used to mimic my parents' accents. We thought they were absolutely hilarious.
My kids say my accent is funny. They laugh at the accent. Sometimes when I pronounce some words, they're like, Mom. I'm like, I'm not English, so bear with me.
Funny. Thank you for doing your show, Goretti. You do such a wonderful, wonderful thing. We're really grateful to you.
No, thank you. Thank you. I'm just trying to find all the nice things you said. Fantastic conversation, Goretti and Viola. That's my mom, actually.
Oh, hi, Mom. Please, I'm not trying to influence Goretti to be a bad girl. We're just having a good, honest conversation.
Yes, yes, a much needed conversation. But thank you so much. Thank you, Viola. I'm just trying to read the comments of the computer before you leave. But
English is not an accent.
no, the English is not an accent. Mabi says, you guys hit the home run again. Bravo.
Thank you.
Yes.
Cameroon tradition. When I
When
drink
I drink 1 month for my bill. Okay, Manka, we don't hear.
Happy hour.
We will. Thank you guys so much. And Viola, if you want to say one last word to your guest of tonight.
Sure. I just want everybody to have this. To remember, we had a conversation here about many different things. You can't cover this topic in a day. You do have the power to be observant in your life as things change for you and around you. The greatest thing you can do is be present in the moment and to have enough love and honesty with yourself to pay attention to how you feel about things and to try to recognize the signs in other people. Just because mistakes are made doesn't make you a bad person. Our parents are usually wonderful people, even those that make a hell of a lot of mistakes. The trick here is to carve out a life for you that you love and that you like, because we're not here forever. So make it count.
Make it count. Thank you so much. Make that dash count. the dash between your date of birth and
the dash is everything. It's everything.
Make that dash count. Thank you so much, Val. I'm going to keep you backstage while I say goodbye.
Certainly.
Yes, thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you, guys. And I think, like Inda, what I take away from this conversation again is that the importance of agency of self. Look in, take stock of what's happening. Be confident enough to care about you enough to be aware of everything that's happening to you. That's my interpretation, in my own words, the agency of self. I just want to thank you guys so much for joining tonight, for staying through it. The Woman Experience community, you guys are amazing. I can see all the comments coming up. Thank you very much. If you think that this conversation is helpful to our community, please share it. Share it on your page at the very least, or share it to the groups you belong to. You can share directly from WhatsApp to Facebook, from Facebook to WhatsApp now. So share it as widely as you can. Subscribe. Have you subscribed yet? If you're new to our page, make sure you subscribe. We have the Goretti Experience on Facebook. So like, follow. And on YouTube, we have the Goretti Experience as well. So like and follow. We're back on Wednesday with another enriching conversation. So I hope to see you there. And for all of you who have spent your Friday evening with me, I appreciate you so much. Thank you. And do enjoy the rest of your weekend. Bye-bye.